What's going on, everybody? Simple back at it like I'm checking my height. Today we are checking out the attack of the dead men. This is gas warfare on the Eastern Front. Sabaton history number 51. If this is your first time checking out Sabaton history with me, make sure you guys head on over to their channel after. Show them some support over there. Check out some of their stuff. Let us know what you want us to check out over here. Hit up the Google form down in the description below. Alright, without further ado, let's go.
I'm Indy Neidell.
And I'm Per from Sabaton.
And this is Sabaton History. There are a lot of legendary tales that came out of the Great War.
Yeah, and the song Attack of the Dead Men talks about one of the most legendary.
And the strangest.
Okay.
And the most legendary.
Yeah, but the strangest.
And maybe most legendary.
Osovitz fortress was built in the late 19th century on a strategic hotspot near the river Biebrze in what is now Poland, but back then was the Russian Empire. It was just about 50 kilometers away from East Prussia, though, along the important railway line from Bialystok to Königsberg, which conveniently ran straight through the fortress. So it's kind of obvious why this was quite a headache for German high command in the Great War. This close to the German border, and effectively controlling one of the few railway lines through all the bogs and marshes in the area, the fortress had to either be taken or destroyed. Otherwise, it would prevent any advance into northern Poland. In fact, the Germans had tried to take the fortress back in September 1914 and again in February 1915, where the second attack had severely damaged much of the fortress defenses through heavy bombing. But the main defensive ring had nonetheless held long enough for the Russian counterattacks to force the attackers to break off. By the summer of 1915, though, the Kaiser's army was determined to try again. Now, August von Mackensen's Gorlice-Tarnów offensive that summer had thrown much of the Russian forces on the Eastern Front off balance.
I couldn't imagine being that close to your enemy and like trying to figure out how to maneuver through everything. Like that would, oh man. It's mental warfare as much as physical.
And German and Austro-Hungarian forces advanced on a wide front eastwards. Seeing their chance, German high command wanted to also take Poland in a frontal attack and ordered Generalfeldmarschall Paul von Hindenburg on the offensive. Osowitz fortress was an important prize to take from the weakened Russian army. So 12 German infantry battalions, accompanied by up to 30 heavy artillery pieces, set their sights on Osowitz. The core of the Russian defenders, under General Lieutenant Berzhozovsky's command, was made up of around 500 men from the 226th Infantry Regiment Zemlyansky, supported by several hundred militia. They dug in several lines of defenses and redoubts, trying to give the German artillery as small a target as possible. But once the assault began, much of the fortress walls, barracks, and towers began to crack under the heavy German siege artillery. But artillery alone won't take the fortress. They would still need the infantry for that job, and the Russians had enough machine guns and defensive works to make that very difficult and very costly. The Germans, though, brought in a fairly new and extremely dangerous weapon: gas. Now, gas warfare was fairly new. In 1914, the French had used tear gas, and in early 1915, the Germans had first used poison gas at Bolimov, though that failed. Since then, however, it had had a devastating effect on the totally unprepared and ill-equipped Russian soldiers, who died gruesome and horrible deaths in the deadly clouds of gas. Without gas masks to protect themselves, the defenders of Osowitz were expected to suffer the same fate. In the early morning of August 6th, as the winds were finally favorable, the German gas batteries opened up. A dark green smog descended upon the battered defensive works. The wave of gas crept over the Russian lines, creating a death zone. The gas used was made out of a mixture of chlorine and bromine. While the bromine acted as a respiratory irritant, the chlorine attacked the lungs, chemically burning them, right? The chlorine attached itself to moisture in the air, turning it to hydrochloric acid, which then bit into the membranes and flesh of the lungs, aggressively dissolving the soft tissue. The Russian soldiers were literally choking on their own blood, as every breath they took destroyed their lungs. Unable to breathe, they died in agony, coughing out bloody lumps of their own lungs. But it was not only the lungs that suffered, as the acid attacked the soft tissues of the eyes and noses, burning them chemically as well. The soldiers burned from the inside out. Many died within the first few minutes. Those further away from the initial attack tried binding wet rags and urine-soaked shirts around their faces in a desperate attempt to protect themselves, but that often helped little. Everything the wave of gas came in contact with began to die. Leaves and grass turned yellow and black. It killed the insects and the animals in the woods. There was no escaping as the gas crept into every ditch and into every hole, even attaching itself to the brass of guns and shells. The defenders suffered heavy losses, and whole companies in the foremost trenches were simply wiped out. Only around 100 men in the defensive lines further back survived, still terribly burned. As the gas dissipated, the German infantry battalions formed up. While other units went to secure the railway line, it was up to these 7,000 men of the German 76th Landwehr Division to storm the main defensive lines in front of the fortress. Confident that most of the defenders had been wiped out and that the few left would be overcome with ease, the German infantry moved onwards. The first lines were indeed littered with only the dead, grotesquely deformed in their final moments of inevitable death. The end. Or was it? As the German troops moved onward over the shelled-out ground, they suddenly came under heavy fire. The fortress artillery opened up on them, and machine gun fire tore holes in their ranks. Further out on the flanks, the last Russian reserve companies coming up from the rear formed to counterattack the German infantry. Seeing those friendly reinforcements rush in with their bayonets attached, the 100-odd survivors in the trenches also emerged. Bayonets fixed, they stumbled like zombies out of their dugouts, crawling and limping their way into the open.
That's incredible. The willpower of the human body is nothing to be played with, especially when adrenaline kicks in, especially when you're in some moment like that, when it is fight or die, and you see a bunch of your friends essentially running towards the face of danger. It kind of gives you that extra boost. That's absolutely incredible.
Complete shock stopped the German attackers dead in their tracks. Like dead men returning to life, the Russian survivors came on, heavily breathing, gasping for air through destroyed lungs, their faces scarred by chemical burns, half hidden with bloody rags. They marched on, thirsting for revenge for the terrible fate thrust upon them. Their tears were bloody, their eyes burned red. They spat blood and parts of their lungs as they advanced, croaking and coughing like the living dead. This horrible sight, as well as the unexpected counterattack, halted the Germans, and a deep panic set in. They hastily withdrew, soon running away in terror as the panic spread through their ranks, pushing their comrades aside, trampling over.
I'd be running like crazy too. I could not imagine seeing somebody coming up thinking that you've, just incapacitated all of these people, right? And you don't have to worry about it anymore. All of these troops start coming, so you're like, all right, we didn't finish the job. And then you see all of these troops that you assume are dead get back up and start attacking you. And I just want to say, I love the way this dude narrates this stuff. Like, his videos, I could listen to this dude for days and days and days.
For each other, stumbling over barbed wire as Russian artillery shells fell in between them. The attack of the dead men came on, accompanied by a bayonet charge of the reserves, and recaptured the lost trenches. By 11 a.m., a few hours after the deadly gas attack, the defensive lines were back in Russian control. The Germans had withdrawn back to their own starting positions. Okay, much of the battle remains shrouded in legends and mystery, and that is likely to remain so. The casualty numbers on either side are unknown, as are the German records of this battle, though it was certainly a well-deserved tactical victory of a small Russian force over a much larger German force. Strategically, it did little to preserve the Russian hold on Poland, and Osovitz fortress had to be given up weeks later as it was too damaged and the whole front had to pull back anyhow. And since, after the Russian revolutions of 1917, this war was viewed by the Soviet Union as a capitalist war and a source of shame, it was largely edited or written out in their history books. Nowadays, post-Soviet Union, however, the legend of the attack of the dead men is gaining more attention as Russia's interest in the Great War increases. And the legend is certainly a tale worth telling. That is beyond dispute.
Absolutely, 100%.
The whole song "Attack of the Dead Man," it was one of those like super like, okay, we're gonna do an album about World War One.
Yeah.
And when I was presenting the idea to our record label Nuclear Blast, they were like, okay, so you're gonna have a song about gas? And I was like, yeah, sure, there will be a song, such song. We didn't know exactly how we're gonna cover it, like in which area, but the story of the dead man was one of the absolutely like most legendary ones that we definitely felt that we needed to get in. And then that's the Osovitz fortress. That's where we get in the.
Have you been there?
No, I never been there. But we have received a lot of fan mails saying like, this is something you really should write a song about. So in the end we did. And we had a little bit of a special way of revealing the song to the fans, because in Russia there's this guy who is famous as Radio Tapok. He's got a very popular YouTube channel. He's a touring heavy metal musician who does cover songs of bands like Sabaton, but he translates them into Russian. Okay. So I asked him, would you be willing to do a song which nobody has ever heard? And do it, you translate it into Russian, and you release it before us. And he was like, that's a weird thing.
It's
I
cool,
never
though.
heard about it.
It sounds kind of cool, though.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so he before anybody has
really
heard the
cool.
song, he heard it, he recorded it, he translated it into Russian, and he made a music video for it and put it out. I think that was interesting way. A lot of people said I'm crazy when I come with such a marketing idea.
I mean, you could have sued him for millions of dollars.
Yeah, that could have been. That could have been the case. Like, hey, you stole our song.
You told me. Why would I tell you to?
But we actually gave him the song, and it was very popular, and he did a good job. And maybe we can listen to a little bit of Russian version of it.
I hope so. Now, since people were asking you to write lots of stuff about the First World War, and you've got, about the Red Baron and Lawrence of Arabia, which one was the topic that most people asked you to write a song about?
About World War One.
Yeah.
And the most requests are for the Christmas truce.
Aha, okay.
Fun enough. But we didn't have a song that fitted to it, so we couldn't get it in. But second most wanted song was Attack of the Dead Men.
It's interesting because I didn't know that story before I started writing The Great War, but I'm a historian, and you think, but it's really the last few years it's become so much more. People know so much more about it. So.
That's incredible.
And
he said he's a historian and didn't know about this tale. So it just goes to show that there's so many other things that are buried in history that we don't even really know about. Very, very few people hold them, and most of the time they hold it to the grave. We'll never find out about some of the things that have happened.
guess where I found out about it, mainly.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
From you.
Yeah.
So
that's my job.
Well, we have the fans as well, but where we were looking for information about it was mainly from you.
So more recently is when...
It's nice that I can change the world one person at a time, or one metal band at a time.
Yeah.
Now,
Thank
I
you,
mentioned
man, for
before
bringing that to the public.
in
That's
the history bit that there's not a lot of specific history about this specific battle. Like, there's so many things we don't know. because so many of the records were destroyed or mislaid or intentionally destroyed during the Soviet Union, because World War I was not a patriotic war. It was the imperialist war.
It's a problem that we often face, you know.
Yeah.
People say, oh, here is a story.
Yeah.
And then you can't find the proper information about it. These days, it's so much easier. But I mean, going back to the beginning when we started to write about it, it was not easy for us to find information.
Sure.
I mean, people who are into history, people who are historians, they know where to search, where to find. They have the networks to find it. We stand in the beginning absolutely alone. We didn't even have the fans.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for where we stand now, where we have good contacts like you, for example.
Well,
very good reference for World War One.
Historians like Marcus and Vika and stuff. That
Perfect
say hi,
people.
guys. There you go.
They're our awesome team who
awesome.
can help us with coming up with the information. But in the beginning, it was really difficult.
Well, you know, you mentioned the Christmas truce, and people asked a lot during the Great War, and they still ask, they're like, well, did they try anything like that on the Eastern Front? Because the Christmas truce was on the Western Front.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, how come there was nothing like that on the Eastern Front? You know, there's a very simple reason why there wasn't on the Eastern Front.
Orthodox.
That's the truth. Some Russian soldiers did try an Easter truce in 1916. They came out of their trenches on Easter, you know, to start the same sort of thing. And they were all shot at and taken prisoner by the Germans and the Austrians because they used a different calendar.
Yeah.
And it was 13 days different, so it was not Easter to the Germans and Austrians. They just saw a bunch of Russians walking out of their trenches for hanging out and going, hey, come on, here's some drinks. And shot at them. I wouldn't have shot at them. Drinks are drinks.
Right?
Yeah.
Never
Drinks
look
are
a free
drinks,
drink in the...
man.
Well, that doesn't make sense. I'll shut up now. You can edit that out. So what are you doing?
I'm having drinks.
Drinks. All right. Well, since it's drinking time, I guess it's time for us to say goodbye, Per.
Yeah, it is. And thank you for everybody for watching this episode
Of Sabaton History.
Thank you for bringing it to us. Seriously, watch this guy.
Listen
all
to
day.
me, everybody. We love the Sabaton History channel. If you do it, please share it with us. Support it on Patreon, YouTube, and any way you want. Thank you for your support. Let's do this forever.
Let's do it. I'm down. You know we're always down with some Sabaton. Especially when it comes to the history. Alright. Let me know what you guys thought about this one down in the comments below. Let me know where to go from here. Make sure you guys keep yourself healthy. I'll catch you on the next one.